What is ethical banking and how does the model differentiate between more traditional lenders? Is the ethical banking model a solution to growing a more sustainable Wales? To discuss this and more, I'm joined today by Mark White, CEO of Robert Owen Community Banking. Hi, Mark.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
Very good. Thank you, Mark. Thanks for joining us today. So tell us all about Robert Owen Community Banking.
Okay, Robert Owen Community Banking Fund, or ROCBUF as we abbreviate it to, is a social enterprise. We're a community development finance institution or a community finance company. Our business is divided really into three main components. We lend to small businesses, so we do term loans up to 5 years from £1,000 up to £25,000. We also deliver local authority home improvement loan contracts. And then the third element to it, which I suppose dovetails into the business loans to some degree, is we have funds that we particularly specialise in lending for anything to do with community renewable energy projects or anything to do with community renewable initiatives.
Tell us a little bit about the history, because I know there's quite a nice story behind the organisation.
Yeah, well, wind the clock back about 11, 12 years ago, we had a banking crisis in the UK, well, across the world, really. We had a credit union movement within the UK, and I stress ROCBUF is not a credit union. We're a community finance company, but we're not a credit union. And had a group of individuals in Newtown in mid Wales, two of which are still on our board, were looking at how the needs of local economies could be addressed through American models of community finance companies lending to small businesses. Because at the time, access to finance was a real problem for small businesses, not just in Wales, but across the UK, with the banking crash of 2007, 2008. And they set up Robert Owen Community Banking Fund with the idea of attracting capital from ethical investors not content with the way the banking system had gone, the mainstream banking system had gone, and using that capital put out into small businesses within foundation economies, within local economies, in a small way to change the way that the banking environment and the banking system was working. Because, clearly 11, 12 years ago, we had a very, very broken system. Robert Owen is widely acknowledged as the founder of the cooperative movement. He was a textiles entrepreneur in the late 18th century, early 19th century, and he pioneered the concept of employee ownership within his businesses. So hence he's credited with founding the cooperative movement. So hence they adopted the name Robert Owen Community Banking. Robert Owen comes from Newtown, and he's buried in Newtown. So there's the fit. There's where the name came from. So that's pretty much the history of it in a nutshell.
What kind of businesses do you generally work with? What's that perfect fit?
Perfect fit would be a small local business that's perhaps struggling for whatever reason to access finance from a mainstream business finance provider, perhaps mainstream banks. They may even be struggling to meet Development Bank of Wales's criteria. They're looking to either expand their business or protect their business in some way and turn it around in some way. They've got fundamentally a good, sound business. They're serving the local economy. They may have a poor credit history, although we lend to businesses that have good credit histories as well. But in some way, shape or form, they're struggling to get the finance that they need to either thrive or survive. And that's the type of business that we're really looking to support.
So is it a general business, or is it more lean towards social enterprises and employee-owned companies?
We will do any type of business at all. We don't differentiate between social businesses, social enterprises, community businesses, or privately owned businesses. So a couple of examples that we've done recently, we've supported a tech startup in the communications sector up in North Wales recently, which was struggling to access finance because of the history behind one of the principals in the business. We've supported a long-standing print business in Cardiff which supports young people who are long-term unemployed. Now, that's a private sector business, but the individuals that own that business just have an ethical standpoint behind what they're doing to try and support young people. That's a very long-standing, very, very profitable print business. It's carved a niche out for itself. Again, it was struggling to access finance for whatever reason. We stepped in and helped them with their expansion plans.
And what type of fees do you charge in comparison with some of the mainstream lenders?
Our rates and our fees are completely comparable with any mainstream business lender. All of our loans are supported under the UK government's Enterprise Finance Guarantee Scheme, so there's a fee associated with that. But I think if you compared our rates and our fees alongside any mainstream lender that's out there, it stacks up pretty well.
And in terms of your actual model, in terms of your own credit lines, how does that work? Where is your finance coming from?
Okay, our investors are typically charities, town councils. We're looking to raise finance and investment from corporates as well, local authorities that have spare cash, that they're in spare reserves, that they're investing in us on a purely commercial basis. We're not funded through any grant schemes or anything like that. As a social enterprise company limited by guarantee, we don't have any shareholders, but we offer investors a fair rate of return against their investment. So it's a wide range of investors that we've got. But as a small finance company, we are always on the lookout for more capital, and that is probably the biggest challenge that we face at the moment, is accessing suitable capital that we can lend. All of our investments are underwritten because all of our lending is done through the UK government's Enterprise Finance Guarantee Scheme. So any investments within our operation are pretty safe.
You obviously pride yourselves as being that ethical bank, the ethical banking. Just explain what's the difference really between ethical banking and mainstream banking?
Well, that's a little bit difficult to pin down in many respects, because I mean any mainstream bank out there is clearly operating in an ethical way. I wouldn't claim that they're not. But you know, if we wind the clock back 10 years ago, a few years ago, the mainstream banking system in the UK and across the world let society and economies down through very inappropriate lending and very inappropriate investment practices. So I guess it's about how you do things and what you're looking to do and how you're looking to change society that defines whether you're an ethical banking institution or whether you're not. You know, on a very, very simple transparency basis, we don't get involved in anything, in lending to anything which could deliberately cause harm. So the obvious ones there are the arms trade, tobacco, anything which harms the environment. But I guess it's about how you're looking to change society and change the way that the banking system and the financial systems work. So as an ethical banking institution, we're looking very much at local economies, local initiatives, how we can keep economic activity flowing within local economies across Wales, within regions of Wales, within small communities in Wales, rather than how we can make a buck quickly through some sort of inappropriate practice. So I guess it's a slightly difficult one to pin down. I mean, a very obvious ethical lender is Charity Bank. Charity Bank does what it says on the tin. It only lends to charities and social enterprises. We do lend to private sector businesses, but we're very, very interested in how those private sector businesses are going to put our funds to use, or our investors' funds to use, and whether they're going to do it in an ethical way that contributes to the local economy, that contributes to making a better society, and keeps the pound circulating within that local economy.
I'd imagine as well the fact that you guys are a social enterprise, if you compared yourselves to a more traditional bank, I'd imagine the culture within the organisation is going to be naturally very different, just because you're that social enterprise.
We're run by a volunteer board. We don't pay massive salaries. We don't have shareholders. Everything that we do is reinvested back into the business. So yes, we are a social enterprise ourselves. Our aims and objectives make it quite clear that we're there to make society a better place.
What's your view on social enterprise generally? What I mean by that is we're doing a lot in that space ourselves at the moment, certainly researching a lot of different models. And from the obvious benefit is, employee-owned businesses, for example, are highly motivated. They're giving a lot more back to the community. What's your general views on social enterprises?
I picked up, Mark, that the Business Use Wales has set up your responsible arm, and I really, really applaud that. I think it's absolutely superb. We work very, very closely with Wales Council for Voluntary Action. They have their own funds for lending to charities and social enterprises, so we do work closely with them. We work very, very closely with Derek Walker and the team at Wales Cooperative Centre. The employee, you mentioned specifically there, the initiative around employee buyouts and employee-owned businesses. That is an area of economic development within Wales that we would really, really love to support much more than we currently do. We have funds to lend, and we would be very excited at the prospect of getting more referrals coming through to us for businesses that are going to be employee-owned. We lend to social enterprises already. There's a slightly different approach when you look at a social enterprise in terms of a lending proposition, but the fundamentals are all exactly the same. So, yeah, I think social enterprise and employee-owned businesses are a really important contributor to the Welsh economy, and I think it's going to become more and more important as we progress.
Do you think we'll get to the point? I asked quite a few people that come onto this podcast the same question. Do you think it's realistic that maybe one day, a local population centre, for example, will own a renewable energy source in their region, which will deliver that community free energy? It'll plug into the grid and generate a profit.
Oh, it's happening already, Mark. It's happening already. There are already a significant number of initiatives around that sort of model. Obviously, the big thing that stymied or interrupted that flow was the withdrawal by the Conservative government a few years ago of the feed-in tariffs. I think we will see a return to that and a return to encouraging communities to be self-reliant in energy. We're already working on a number of initiatives with a number of community-led renewable energy groups, looking at solar farms, solar panels on roofs. Through our Community Energy Fund, we funded an initiative which was a partnership between local community groups, local energy groups, and Swansea Council to put a arrays of solar panels on a portfolio of school roofs across some of the most deprived wards within Swansea. So that sort of initiative is already happening, and I think we will see more of it.
Final question, Mark, in terms of the Welsh economy generally. Lots of uncertainty, obviously, at the moment with Brexit, and we'll skip that
Yes.
as a topic. But lots of positive indicators coming out from lots of different benchmark reports. What's your own views? Do you see credit lines being used? What's your general thoughts?
I see credit within small businesses becoming ever more important, and I see it changing in the way that it is accessed. Obviously, fintech, financial technology is becoming more and more important. Access to finance is becoming easier through much more sophisticated platforms. At the moment, we operate a very, very traditional, old-fashioned relationship banking platform. That may change going forward. What was interesting was actually comments I heard from NatWest's chief economist in an interview that you actually did with him over the last few weeks, that the Welsh economy is actually outperforming the UK economy at the moment, is quite resilient. Services, IT, food and drink and leisure, are doing quite well. Employment is suffering. The outlook does remain uncertain for all of us. 2020 is particularly uncertain, but it's interesting to see that a lot of the resilience within the Welsh economy is based around the fact that the Welsh economy is quite significantly based upon this local economy, foundation economy concept, with something I think about 40% of SMEs account for employment within foundation economies within Wales. So, in terms of an economic outlook, I think we've got to be positive. It's going to be uncertain times. We'll be here to support small businesses. We're raising capital to do that. It will be uncertain times, but I think actually people in Wales, the Welsh economy is pretty well geared up to cope with the rocky road that's ahead.
Mark White, Robert Owen, Community Banking Fund. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks very much indeed.